Good morning. Welcome to Cultivating Victory. Today is June 18th, and I'm here with Deborah Brandt and Suzanne Ricketts. Deborah is a certified herbalist with the American Herbalists Guild. She's a registered nurse. And what she's going to talk to us about today is how to use some of those great perennial herbs that you're growing in your Victory garden for added benefits. So herbs like rosemary are very commonly used in gardens because they grow very well in the Southwest. They also have a bunch of benefits for maintaining fungal and microbial populations in your soil. But and they're great in cooking, but they can also help you with your health. So here's Deborah, and I'll let her pick up from there and talk to us a little bit about ways you might want to use rosemary and or maybe some other common garden herbs to help with your health. So Deborah.
Okay. Yes, I like to use rosemary a lot. It's a common traditional herb. It's been used for centuries. It was called the herb of remembrance in like the Renaissance days and back then because it helped you remember. And modern medicine research has found that it actually does help you remember. And there seems to be a role for it in dementia, Alzheimer's type of illnesses because so it does have a role in that. So that where it shows traditional medicine and conventional modern medicine come together and agree on it being an herb of remembrance. It's very aromatic. It seems it's absorbed well through the skin. People who are having memory problems, I recommend either drinking a cup of the tea, like about a teaspoon of the dried leaves, for a cup of hot water, and then let it infuse for about 10 minutes, and do that probably twice a day to help with remembrance and remembering things, and hopefully help slow down the progress of Alzheimer's or dementia. Nothing really stops it completely, but it can be helpful, just like the drugs that are used for dementia. It's because of its aromatics, it's also a really good antimicrobial because all the aromatic herbs pretty much are. And it seems to be helpful against fungal infections, bacterial infections. But when we talk about herbs for its antimicrobial, they don't have just action against viral, excuse me, or fungal or bacteria, but they seem to have a broad range because they have to protect themselves against these onslaughts, and they in turn, being our friends, help us in resistance of different illnesses as well. And it's also a very good antioxidant, and if something is an antioxidant, that means it's also anti-inflammatory. So it has anti-inflammatory properties as well, which goes along very nicely with antimicrobial properties because with infection you often get a lot of inflammation, so it helps control that as well as counteract infections.
So actually, Deborah, I get asked a lot when I'm talking about natural remedies, how can one remedy do so many things? And I think you kind of hinted on that here, but the plants are these arsenals of chemical defense. They're making lots and lots of different phytochemicals to address different problems that the plant itself might encounter. I just think that's part of the paradigm shift that people need to go through when they stop thinking strictly about drugs and individual cause-effect relationships and look at the whole balancing process that goes on with natural medicine. Is that something you encounter often as you talk to people about herbal medicine?
Yes, that is one of the basic differences between modern medicine. Modern medicine has drugs that are like magic bullets, like one constituent. So that makes them very powerful, but that also increases the side effect profile. And that is one thing people say, well, how can an herb do so many different things? But one herb can have hundreds or thousands of constituents, and some of those buffer potential side effects, some of those do other things. So when we look at an herb, we have to have a different shift in our thinking. We don't look in a reductionist way. We look in we include everything. It's not exclusive, it's inclusive of all the effects that an herb might have, because herbs have been food and medicine forever, and we wouldn't be here today if we didn't have them for food and medicine. So of course they're going to contain nutrients, and some of those nutrients and other chemicals have medicinal effects for specific purposes too. So it's a much more inclusive way of looking, which makes it hard to research them, of course, because there's so many different constituents in them that all work together for the plant's benefit, but also for our benefit.
Right. In fact, one of the difficulties trying to design a study is which constituent do you normalize, because you want to use an identical product in different treatment groups, but plants are constantly changing ratios of different chemicals to one another. And so
yes, they have to be adaptive just like we are. We adapt and they adapt, and so it's a nice fluid motion of interaction that we have with them.
Yeah. So the other comment I hear a lot as I talk with people about growing plants and working in their gardens is that if you mention that something like rosemary might be benefiting soil microbes, there's always going to be somebody in the group who says, wait a minute, that's antimicrobial. And I think it goes back to this complexity, right? That there are so many different antibiotic, antifungal, antiviral properties within the plant that they're going to balance these out. They've also got probiotic is the wrong word to use in this context, but they've got nutrients that actually support the growth of microbes as well. So they've managed to find that balancing act between fostering the growth of pathogens versus attracting the beneficial microbes, and they do both very well, right? So
yes.
They don't foster the growth of pathogens. They reduce the growth of pathogens, but they also allow the growth of beneficial microbes.
Yeah, we tend to forget, we don't even think that plants have an intelligence. There's a plant intelligence. We kind of tend to think that we're the only ones that are intelligent, but they also have an intelligence, but it's a different kind, and that we don't completely appreciate and understand.
Okay. Any suggestions for people who are using rosemary in their gardens? Is there a time you should harvest it? Is there any? Do you want to avoid flowers? Do you want to target leaves? What?
Well, you want to use the leaves, and the best time is just before there's any flowering, because that's when all the energy, the constituents are at their peak, is just before flowering. And that goes with other herbs too, like lavender, peppermint, any of them. That's when they're going to be the best. And I usually like to pick them in the morning, and then dry them out of the sun in a dry place, and it usually takes about a week or so, and they're very nice and aromatic that way. A lot of the aromatic herbs you can make cold infusions of too, especially like peppermint, even though we're not really talking about peppermint, but rosemary would work too, which you would put, maybe for a quart of water, put like a tablespoon of the crushed dried leaves in a piece of cheesecloth over the top of a mason jar so it's soaked in all those, and let it sit overnight. And that makes a very elegant and nice tea. And the heat won't destroy any of the constituents in that way. So that's a nice way to do, because the volatile oils in the aromatic plants like rosemary can be easily destroyed by using too much heat.
So when you do your cold infusion, how long is something like that good at room temperature? How long can you store that?
Well, after making the cold infusion, sitting overnight, like on your kitchen counter, and then squeezing out the cheesecloth to get everything out of it into your quart of water, then you can put it in the refrigerator, and it's going to be good for a couple of days.
Okay. Okay. Deborah, thank you. You always provide this wealth of information, and we appreciate you joining us here today.
Thank you. Anytime.